Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and switch your phones to silent. We are pleased to introduce our Master of Ceremonies for Africa Global Business Forum 2015, Mr. John Andrews.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming here for the second day of our conference. I think yesterday was a great success. We covered a big range of views from geopolitics and business through to finance, and we're going to have a very interesting day today, which there'll be a change of the program. We will finish at 1 o'clock, so lunch will not be interrupting the day. It'll be at the end of the day. Actually, just looking back at yesterday, the organizers they're always very good at data. And they tell me that we had over 25 African government leaders, including heads of state, over 100 investor meetings, 250 one-to-one meetings organized through the app. I do encourage you to use the app. It's very good for the moderators here, and I think it's very good for you to asking questions. We don't have 1,300 delegates here today, but you are a very distinguished remnant of those 1,300, and I'm sure more will come. You represent 50 countries, half of them from Africa. So we are very, very pleased that you're here. And I mentioned that we had several heads of state. Well, it's my pleasure now to ask Eithne Treanor to moderate the first session, which is with a head of state, and that's Her Excellency Ameenah Gurib-Fakim, who is the President of Mauritius. Thank you very, very much for your attention, and please welcome Eithne and the President. Thank you.
A very warm welcome to you all, and good morning once again to you. It's great that everybody is here and joining with us. I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to be here with the President of Mauritius, Ameenah Gurib-Fakim. Been in office about half a year now and already has great plans ahead, of course. Now, bear with us today, dear audience. For the next half hour, we may be speaking about bonjour, heterophilicity, and the demise of the dodo. And that's fine. We can all grieve the dodo. But as we do that, we must also congratulate you on running a country that is ranked highly in terms of economic competitiveness, a friendly investment climate, good governance, good economy, the list of accolades that every country in Africa really wants to be promoting. So well done as you take over your presidency. How has the country achieved this? And you've been a very active member of the business community, of course. We'll talk about that later. But over the years, how has the country got to this level of admiration?
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be in Dubai and to be addressing this prestigious forum. Mauritius became independent in 1968, and when it became independent, the economy depended on sugar. Yes. And just to give you an idea, in 1970, the economy was dependent to 92% on one component, wow, which is sugar. And as we speak, the sugar, the agricultural component, is only putting in 2 points in the economy. Nice. So it has been massive diversification. And not just diversification, but I think the previous governments, successive governments, they have leveraged education. Education, it became free in 1976. And we've had capitalized also on the need for social benefits, providing the safety net for those who are more vulnerable. And health is also free. So these are the fundamentals that have really helped to drive the economy of the country. And when in 1976, when education became free, the choice for parents to educate the daughters was no longer there. So it was no longer an issue of whether the daughter should be educated as opposed to the boys. And for me, that was a boon, because it also helped me to access education at that moment in time. And once this happened, then we had a fairly modestly trained workforce in the 1980s, And of course, with the years going by, we've been able to educate more and of course train more. And of course, our capital remains our force.
And indeed, I mean, it's absolutely essential when we look at the development of any country, and we look at the development of, this island state, which has really been doing tremendous work recently. And what we're also seeing here, a state that was on the trade routes for years, indeed first visited by the Arabs, so there's an affinity there, and fought over by many people, of course, and again, a tremendous legacy there. But we look at what's happening now and the ocean economy that is going to happen here with this state, and the development that they're looking, and even our own DP World, looking very, very closely at the port there, at what they can do and what they can bring to the port to actually develop it a lot more. The exclusive economic zones that were going to be operated there, and I believe you'll share some of this with the Seychelles, but the potential that's there in terms of maritime, in terms of biodiversity, in terms of fisheries, all of that, how do you see that in the future?
Well, you've rightly said Mauritius is an ocean state because we have 2,200 square kilometers of land, but 2.2 million kilometers of sea. So, as you have said, we were visited by the Arabs, we were visited by the Dutch, and the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French, and then the English. So everybody has been there. It's a very important trade route, and we have rightly said that Mauritius was the star and key of the Indian Ocean. And I think what we're trying to now is leverage this strategic positioning of the country in the Indian Ocean, acting like a bridge between East and West, and of course going through Africa. And you've also mentioned DP World. Yes, we have been discussing with the authorities here to develop our port. And of course, we also look at the logistics sectors. So definitely, we will try to use the strategic positioning, and this is what we have to offer in terms of a strategy. And we also believe strongly that we need to build and develop our institution. So strong, credible institutions are going to be key for the advancement of my country.
Now, I just want to remind you that we are taking questions, of course, on the iPad, please. I have it already here, and you did a tremendous job yesterday sending through questions, so I'm very, very happy to take some questions and put them to the President here who's joining us. Now, we talk and look back on the sugar economy that really led the island for many years, and the shift that has happened. I mean, now you look at tourism as a big leader there, but also insurance, the financial sector, all of that really playing its part, and ITC as well, but raising, the level of competence too of the country.
Yes, as you have rightly said, we've developed tourism. Tourism has been a major kind of earner for the country, but we cannot sit on our laurels. We have to keep on diversifying. And this product has to be diversified into manifold. We've been trying to do, for example, wedding destination,
and I think you've been very successful in that. I mean, it is the beautiful pictures. I haven't been there yet, so it's on my list of absolutely essential.
Not for wedding, I hope.
Not for a wedding, no, I'm beyond that at this point now. You'd never know.
So wedding, family, ecotourism, cultural tourism, and so trying to diversify the product. But over and above this, we have also chromatic crossroad in terms of our vision. So we'd like to add very high value to the economy, and one of the areas we are pushing forward will be, for example, the biotech sector, science, technology, innovation, which we'll need to actually put into the frame so as to ensure that growth is also accompanied by job creation. And we mustn't forget that not just for Mauritius, but also for Africa, there's 11 million graduates landing on the job markets every year. And if we don't develop the entrepreneurship sector, and one of the sectors I can also think of for Africa would be agriculture. And unfortunately, this sector has had bad press because whenever you talk about the African farmer, you see the African farmer with a hoe in the sun, and we have to flag in the notion of smart agriculture, especially in the light of climate change, because this continent will be hit by climate change. And if we start negotiating ways, and of course with our development partners as well, how we can bring in the concept of smart agriculture, we're going to pull out many people out of extreme poverty and really create a big shift in terms of the economic fundamentals for the continent.
And again, that coupled with, you know, a stronger educational system, you're also raising the standards, so therefore raising the expectations as well. And people are getting more used to using technology. I mean, even the farmer with the hoe probably is checking out, you know, his weather patterns because he's got a smartphone. You know,
Smartphone,
so
exactly.
Things have changed so much.
So much, yeah.
And how do you incorporate that actually and get people on board to make sure that everybody is driving in the direction and looking to, you know, ultimately deliver that?
Well, you mentioned technology. You mentioned the smartphone. I mean, technology in Africa is getting increasingly very connected. If we look at success stories where the smartphone has made a difference, we look at M-Pesa in Kenya. Mobile money, which is of course very, very in. If you look at telemedicine, which is also being practiced in West Africa, Mali, and of course in Senegal, we see that technology has a very, very important role to play in changing the fundamentals on the continent. But over and above this, we look at technology, I again come back to the issue of climate change. We increasingly on the continent have to look at what I increasingly refer to the resilience dividend, along with the demographic dividend.
Yes.
So we bring in the resilience dividends, the demographic dividend, and this will be, of course, we'll be leapfrogging into the 21st, 22nd century with these fundamentals flagged in. The narrative has to change in terms of putting all these in place so that we serve. And not just we serve, we also become accountable. Because government increasingly have to show responsibility towards the people who elect them, but we have to be also accountable.
Now that is probably easier to manage the resilience dividend and the democratic dividend in a smaller island state. But indeed, it may be a small state, but it is hugely on the international map. I believe everybody in the world knows about Mauritius. So you've got a tremendous brand value there. But how do you coordinate with other leaders, your fellow leaders in Africa, in terms of, you know, working together towards bringing that? And it's beginning to happen, I would think.
Well, it's happening already, and this has been our agenda as well. If we were to talk about the economic agenda, has been into partnership and collaboration and cooperation. And we have done this. We belong to quite a few blocs, and the SADC, the COMESA, for example, the Indian Ocean Commission. And we strongly believe in partnering with and also exchanging. But in Africa, we also have to ensure that the barriers are more porous in terms of economic exchanges, because so far what we've seen, that it is easier perhaps to do business with Europe and perhaps with Asia, as opposed to Africa, and yet we know there's a captive market of 1.2 billion there. And I keep saying that we need to refocus our strategy, look at our Africa strategy, but we also have to put in place all the, you know, tariff, all the economics issue that we have to address so that we can move as one continent.
And really make business easier. Yesterday we were listening to many people saying that it's easier to travel through Europe if you're African than to travel through Africa. And
That's
I mean,
right.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah. So mobility,
Yes.
it can
And the
be
infrastructure as well.
The infrastructure and the mobility especially, because we talk about the divide between East and West, the linguistic divide in Africa. It shouldn't be there. The advantage we have in Mauritius is that we are bilingual.
Yes.
So
Bilingual, trilingual, I mean, it goes on and
well,
on.
1.2 million people and 14 languages spoken and taught at school as well. So we grow up with many languages.
Yes.
So by virtue of this, advantage, we have been able to compete with many other countries, at least for the BPO, for example, the call centers and these services where we rely on the bilingual potential and the bilingual talent of the people.
Tremendous diversity there. Now, I know a lot of people here would be very interested to hear a little bit more about you. You're an eminent scientist, you're a businesswoman, you've had many accolades at home and abroad, and you know you're in the job not even half a year, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I mean, it's tremendous, the president of this country. But give us a feel for, you didn't grow up, or did you, as a young girl thinking, I will be president of this country?
No, I grew up as a young girl who was fascinated with science, and I was infected with the virus of science by my teachers. And so when I was going to choose a career, I was discouraged because people said to me, why do you want to do science?
Yes.
You're a woman, you never get a job when you come back. So I went home and I said to my father, I'm still going to do science. and when I did, I came back to Mauritius. I was ready to go to the United States to do a postdoc, but I came back. And
but at this time, too, I mean, how many people have, and particularly girls, were in education in Mauritius at this time? It had moved on already,
yeah,
but
it had moved
not
on.
as good as it is today.
No, it has moved on, and in fact we have many women in many areas, in the judiciary, in medicine, in fact
politics,
many entrepreneurs.
of course.
Well, politics is not so good, but there are more and more women interested in politics.
And I have a feeling you'll be working on that agenda.
Of course, we have to ensure that we get more and more, at least the gender bias there. We're not as good as Rwanda, for example, but we have some homework to do on the political side. But in many areas, we are there. So as far as the pipe is concerned, I'm trying to increasingly to address blocking the leaky pipe, so that we have more women coming on the other side, of course, being leaders, being role models, because that's very important. The role modeling for women in science, in all spheres of life, because the young girl growing out there needs to have somebody to look up to. And if you have somebody, be it at the presidency or ministers, it's very important to have this role model.
But also as a role model, the young ladies there and even around the world, have you also as a businesswoman?
Yes.
You've been an academic, you've been a businesswoman. How have you combined all of that? And also the importance of learning that you can now bring to your political role.
Yeah. This is very important for the continent, because whenever we talk about Africa, we always say there's no research going on in Africa. There is research going on in Africa. There's plenty of very useful research going on in Africa, but where the problem lies is that these data, these results, they die in what I call the valley of death. Because in Africa, we still haven't developed this notion of philanthropy, of angel funding, of access to capital.
Yes.
So what I did in 2010, I left my comfort zone of the university and I incorporated my own company.
And this was with your research, your
with my
data
research,
that you own.
translated research. And so I just got the data and I thought, well, I've had enough of other people citing my work to develop their products. So it's time that I do it myself. And there's one thing that we also have to teach women going into business from where I came from, especially the academic world, is the notion of learning to take risk. Because if you are an entrepreneur, you have to learn to take risk. And this is where many women fail, because they cannot interiorize the need that they have to be there. And like Nike philosophy is, just do it.
They don't really teach you how to take risk. Does
No.
anybody actually? There's no course.
No.
And particularly in terms of women taking risk, there's no course.
And building the self-confidence in women, that they can go there, they can take risk, and they can drive their business. So I created the space for women and girls and everybody, graduates, to be able to get experience, to improve their CV, because very often it's a chicken and egg situation, that you don't get a job because you don't have experience. And they can come, they improve their CV. And at the same time, I have added value to an area where in Africa we are weak. We are weak because if you look at the Nobel this year, the Nobel came to China with the value addition of Chinese traditional knowledge. And in Africa, there has been no attempt to document this very, very valuable information, which is traditional knowledge. And now the question I ask is, how many Artemisia do we have here, which China got the Nobel for?
Yeah.
And we are losing the biodiversity because of all the reasons we've mentioned so far, but there is also a very urgent need to document our knowledge. And also Africa, by virtue of her colonial history, has marginalized traditional medicine. It is now time to bring it to the fold, because with traditional knowledge, it could provide the third way between science and the hard science, to provide this third way to address climate change issues.
Of course, and all of the skills are there, and all of the traditions, I mean, it's all there. So in a way, you see how China has managed to bring that into, the day-to-day importance in terms of that. And sadly, are you saying that perhaps, Africa is taking a step back on that and not really pushing ahead with those traditions and making those traditions relevant, modern, and applicable?
I think over and above this, it's making, for example, medication accessible and cheap, effective, cheap, and also which is fully compliant with the culture of the country and the culture of the people. So all this flagged together, it makes it a very, very powerful tool for addressing this health need, if anything else. But notwithstanding the fact that international conventions are also in our favor, when I say in our favor, countries in the South, because all countries are sovereign for their biodiversity. So nowadays, when corporates want to discuss with developing countries, we have to negotiate, we have to adhere to, the fundamentals of conventions. And our biggest ally remains the internet.
Yes.
Communication.
It will empower everybody there. It actually
empower everybody.
It is. It's the democratization, really.
Exactly.
It really is.
Yes.
I have many questions coming here, so let me just share some of them with you and give you your answers here.
Sure.
One question that I'm never too fond of, because I don't think they'd ask a man that. But what was your challenge as a woman to become president?
I think the answer is in the question. You are a woman. It was, it's a double-edged sword, because the political parties, they took a risk, because they flagged in a woman with no political background, because I came in, as I said, on the 4th of June, I was in the lab, and the 5th, I was in the State House. So I had no political experience, and I think this went in my favor.
Yes.
A woman with some form of credibility and no political background. So that played well. So whatever were negatives at some point became positive at some point.
Yes. So obviously, I mean, it is, plenty of credibility, I think, in terms of, your accolades, the work that you had done, a businesswoman, putting all of that in place.
Yes.
And I do think people now the voter is more informed.
Yeah.
And they stand back and they look and think,
Yes.
actually, this will work in our
But
favor.
getting a scientist, woman entrepreneur, I think was also a very key message for Africa.
Yes.
Because we need to get more and more women on board. And this is where we need to encourage the girl child in going in the sciences. Because if you put in science, technology, innovation, entrepreneurship with women, we've got a very, very powerful tool to make transformational changes.
Another question here is, if, and this comes from BC Bright, congratulations to you, but asking if your government would work with female social entrepreneurs.
Yes, in Mauritius, the issue now is no longer an issue. I mean, there are so many women entrepreneurs in Mauritius, but what we're trying to say now, these entrepreneurs, they have to move up in the ladder chain and go for high value, which they haven't been doing so far. Because so far, women entrepreneurs, they have been in agriculture looking at very small businesses, but it's now time to move up the ladder and go for higher value. And higher value will come in when you flag the science, technology, innovation component.
Absolutely, and the government can assist with that,
Yes,
and actually encourage it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great flag you're waving there. A question I have from Kumar here. Trainable talent for ICT is a roadblock for scaling ICT growth, but how do you overcome that? And will you allow other nationalities, especially from Africa, to come and to work from Mauritius? With Mauritius or from Mauritius? He says from, but I suppose it's basing business there.
Yeah, but we have opened the space for joint ventures,
Okay.
and so the idea of working with other nationals is no longer an issue. We have been encouraging, but I think another interesting thing that we have done, and this was also flagged in the last budget, was we're increasingly encouraging diaspora to come back.
Yes.
We have to leverage diaspora, and one of the incentives that the government has put in place is a 10-year tax holiday. But what I say is that having this incentive is all very nice, but we need to go beyond this. We need to provide the enabling environment for this diaspora to come back home too. And I'll just give a small cliche. I was in the US last year when I was talking to some of the officials there. They were worried for two things. They were not worried rather, for the Africans working in the US, because they feel that the African in the US will never go back to Africa for these reasons.
Yes.
But they are worried with the Indians who had started to go back, because the enabling environment is being built in India.
Yeah.
But they're more worried for the Chinese, because many of them are going back en masse, because the Chinese government are putting in place the enabling environment to attract all these talented Chinese people living abroad. So if we want to leverage diaspora, the talent from diaspora, we not only have to provide the incentives, but also the enabling environment for them to come back to work. And this environment has to be perhaps as good as, if not better, to what they are used to.
And are you saying that that's not happening fast enough? And perhaps it's not happening at the level that it needs to happen?
I think
because there is a gap too, and if you lose qualified people, you can lose them forever.
In some areas, it's happening in Africa. If you look at the health sector, for example. Now, if you look in terms of output, again, I'll come back to this because the statistics are quite telling. 12% of the world population is in Africa, but we produce less than 1% of the total publication. And in 2013, there was not even one African country in the league of the 20 countries filing patents. So these are dramatic figures. But having said this, if you look at the output in the health sector, by virtue of the challenges that the continent had in terms of health challenges, the output is good. It far exceeds many other regions with similar kind of problem. But we need to go beyond this. We need to be able to be more productive in other areas, in STEM, in whatever you call it. We need to be as productive, if not more.
And indeed, that is something that everywhere around the world is chasing. It's absolutely essential for economic development, particularly the STEM. So having that support, and I know you're launching just next week, I believe, the Planet Earth Initiative.
Yes.
You know, you're taking on board some issues and bringing together some key people to actually move this agenda. Tell us just a little bit about that as well.
Planet Earth Institute is a charity which is based in London, and we have got 4 countries which are going to be involved in this, producing capacity, 10,000 PhDs over 100 years, 10 years. 10,000 PhD over 10 years, and this is being done with the PASSET program of the World Bank. It's going to be operated from Mauritius, from my office, literally. And so far we've got Senegal, we've got Rwanda, we've got Ethiopia, and of course Mauritius, pushing forward the need for capacity building. And I'm a firm believer in the need to address quality teaching, quality research, because you have to flag in the quality component, because quality knows no gender and quality will survive time.
And again, it's about, you know, having that quality, as you say, that research, but bringing together then, you know, entrepreneurs, corporations, money, investors. I mean, how do you propose to actually bring all of that? I think setting up this foundation, this institute, is a super way to start. But now the next step, it can't exist just as an institute with wonderful quality papers.
No, that's what I said. We need to develop the environment, and we need also to speak a lot to philanthropists. Now, if you look at the way Google, if you look at the way Facebook has emerged, if you look at Microsoft, they all have been university projects. But how did they go from university in Harvard and to Palo Alto, and of course now reaches the world? So there is no magic in this. It's because they have had the necessary access to capital. And I think if we have access to capital, I think this could be a really game changer.
And again, for Mauritius, for investment there, I know the investment community, the financial sector in the region is quite active and it's quite alive, but is there enough money there, domestic money that's helping, or are you really looking for more imported and foreign investment to help along these?
You know, I don't like inbreeding. So you need to have foreign direct investment coming in. So we increasingly depend on FDI, and FDI flow is very important for development of our fundamentals. And FDI also shows that we know people trust the system, they trust the institution. So building the notion of trust, building the credibility is very important.
Now, I have another question here, and one of the issues that has been discussed over the past 2 days too is the frustration with infrastructure. It's a lot easier to manage on an island state, but a message here from Kwasi asking, how do you assess the contribution of land, sea and air transport to economic development in your
very,
island
very
state.
important, very key. And you have rightly mentioned infrastructure. For the continent, we have to build, as I said, the infrastructure, but not just the physical infrastructure. We also have to build the legal infrastructure, the economics, so we know how to deal, how to trade, how to do business with our neighbors. And if you look at the economic blocks like the SADC, where Mauritius belongs, a lot of effort has gone into, for example, addressing the tariff issue. And yesterday I was very pleased when I heard President Kagame talk about ICT and, of course, the internet and also the telephony, the charges. So all these have to be harmonized so that we have a really good enabling environment at the level of the blocks, at the level, because, you know, Africa, as I said, it's a continent. It's not one country like India or China. So we have to look at specificities. We have to look at regions. There are good stories happening in North Africa, in East Africa, in Southern Africa. So we have to partner with those, of course, that think alike just like us, with the idea of leaving a legacy behind, because we have this 5-year mandate. We have to develop, get results for the people, so that when we represent ourselves in front of the people, we have, as we increasingly refer to in the French word, a bilan, as we say. And this shows the responsibility towards the people and also the accountability that we have to flag into the paradigm.
And the infrastructure that's been put in place in Mauritius, I mean, you have a world-class airport. The flights from Emirates here, the A380 is able to land there.
Yes.
And it's having difficulties in other more developed airports. So, I mean, you've put in place some tremendous infrastructure. But what can Mauritius maybe perhaps specialize in? And you look at what are your key attributes? You don't have natural resources like many of the other countries in Africa.
Yes.
Biotech, the island state, all of that. How can you capitalize on that, and what can you offer to the world in terms of being special?
I think one thing that we have been doing rather, and we should keep on doing, is being nimble-footed and be very flexible and take decision. And take decision fast and, right decision hopefully at the time when it's being taken. Whatever it takes, you need to be very fast in taking decision. And this is something that people expect any country that has ambitions to be a leader or whatever it is, we need to be able to take decision very fast.
Now, it's only a few hours, what is it, about 5-6 hours from Dubai to hop down to Mauritius. And Hamad here asking, can Mauritius become a second home for people in the Gulf region? So when maybe it's getting a little bit hot here in the summer, can we all hop on a plane and maybe come down and enjoy all the beauty of Mauritius?
Well, Mauritius had been developing what is increasingly referred to as the integrated resort scheme.
Yes.
And many overseas people have been purchasing property, and so this is an area that would be of interest to our friends from this part of the world. But you have mentioned rightly that we have good infrastructure for the airport, but we're also hoping that with the help of DP World, we should be able to develop the port sector as well and make it as efficient as that of the Emirati regions.
And that, of course, will have a huge knock-on effect on all sorts of other business.
Yes, of course.
I mean, it's having a great port that's a great accolade to have.
Exactly.
But beyond that, the business that will grow, the free zone business. So really the sky's the limit in terms of probably growing small and medium-sized business and entrepreneurship as well,
so
if that
this
happens.
reinforces the notion of developing our infrastructure, and the IT, we're also making good progress there. So connectivity, telephony,
And combining
IT,
everything, really,
bind
isn't
everything
it?
together. So really join the dots to make it happen.
Now, we know you're 6 months into the job. You have hopefully your business plan ahead of you in terms of what you look at, and also you won't be there forever.
No.
So tell us a little bit about what your next plan is, just as we wrap up this session.
Well, I said when I came in, because I am tied by what the Constitution allows me to do, but I felt there was enough space to be able to do things. And at the end of the day, just like one United States president say, it's the economy, stupid. So we have to focus on what the economy is. So develop the think tanks around science, technology. I've already done this with the Planet Earth Institute. We're starting this.
So you're wasting no time.
I can't. Yeah. We have to move very fast. Then the other one, which sounds a bit strange, it's culture, heritage. because the culture, the heritage, and yesterday I heard some very nice conversation around art being, of course, a binding element to encourage dialogue. We live in a diversified country where there are many religions living next to each other, so the interfaith and the intercultural dialogue is very important. Art is a very good way of accessing, being transversal right across these various cultures. Heritage, we have a heritage in Africa, as I said, in terms of traditional knowledge. And the other one is sustainability. Everything that has to do with sustainable development, especially as we lead to COP21 in Paris. So we have to look at this, and this is when I talk about looking at the resilience dividend. There's so much to be done in terms of addressing this upfront and the research development, so there is plenty of homework to do.
And good luck to you. And I'm sure your colleagues here at the Chamber of Commerce and all of the support from Dubai will be here really cheering you on. And we all wish you very, very great success in your presidency. So, Madam President, big thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for taking the time. So, President Ameenah Gurib-Fakim from Mauritius. We're so grateful you've joined us. Thank you so much. Thank you.